Picture a wave taller than our biggest skyscrapers, moving at the speed of a jet. Now, this isn't your typical tsunami, the kind born from the familiar rumble of an earthquake. This is a mega-tsunami, a monster wave set in motion by a deep ocean landslide, where a piece of rock the size of a city suddenly snaps off and plunges into the abyss. It's a terrifying thought experiment, one that has fascinated and frightened scientists for years. So, what would actually happen if the scenario, a fringe scientific possibility, were to play out on the U.S. coast? How would our world change in a single day? First, to really get a handle on the power we're talking about, we have to know the difference between a tsunami and a mega-tsunami. A normal tsunami comes from tectonic plates shifting under the ocean. They're incredibly destructive, with waves that can hit land at 30, maybe even 100 feet high. Devastating, yes, but on a scale we can at least begin to comprehend. A mega-tsunami is a completely different animal. It's not triggered by the slow grind of tectonic plates, but by a sudden cataclysmic event like a massive landslide. Think of it like dropping a bowling ball into a bathtub versus just sloshing the water back and forth. The splash is violent, immediate, and creates a wave of almost unbelievable size. For our thought experiment, the trigger is the collapse of a flank of an oceanic volcano. The most famous and controversial candidate for this is the Vieja volcano in the Canary Islands. The idea, proposed in a 2001 study, was that a huge piece of the island could catastrophically slide into the Atlantic. The energy from that single event would be immense, kicking up a wall of water that, near the source, could be thousands of feet high. This is the origin story of our 1,000-foot monster. As this wall of water starts racing across the Atlantic, it shows off one of the most terrifying things about tsunamis. They're sneaky. In the deep ocean, a tsunami can travel up to 500 miles an hour, the same speed as a jetliner. But its wave height is just a few feet, spread out over a wavelength that can be miles long. A cruise ship could sail right over it, and the passengers wouldn't feel a thing, completely unaware of the apocalyptic force moving silently under their feet. This is a normal surface wave from the wind. A tsunami is a pulse of energy moving through the entire water column, from the surface to the seafloor. For about 6 to 9 hours after collapse in the Canary Islands, this energy would speed toward the U.S. East Coast. It's a race against time for millions of people who have no idea the ocean itself is coming for them. The moment the wave roars off the deep ocean and onto the shallow continental shelf, everything changes. All that deep water energy has nowhere to go but up. The wave slows down, but its height explodes. The 1,000-foot tsunami has arrived. Imagine you're in New York City. The first bizarre sign would be the water pulling away from the shore, receding an impossible distance as the bay is drawn into the approaching wave. Then, the horizon would start to darken, not with a storm cloud, but with a wall of water taller than any building in the city, literally blotting out the sky. The impact isn't a splash, it's an obliteration. A wave this high doesn't just flood a city, it scours it off the map. Concrete and steel would be torn from their foundations and become part of a churning soup of debris. The sheer force would pulverize buildings, turning entire city blocks into an unrecognizable mess. The wave wouldn't just stop at the beach. In low-lying areas, a surge of this power could push for miles inland, funneling up river valleys and devastating everything in its path. Major hubs from Boston down to Washington D.C. would be inundated. The landscape of the East Coast would be changed forever in just a few hours. If you're finding this scenario both terrifying and fascinating, and you want to understand more about the forces that shape our world, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. We love exploring the biggest what-ifs to better understand the planet we call home. The hours after the wave passes would look like something from a disaster movie. The water, now a thick, toxic stew of soil, debris, and the ruins of civilization, would slowly retreat, leaving behind a poisonous sludge. The economic and political heart of the United States would be gone. Wall Street, the federal government in D.C., and the major ports that fuel global commerce would simply cease to exist. The death toll would be in the tens of millions. Survivors would face a world without any modern infrastructure. No power, no clean water, no communication. Major highways and airports would be wiped out. The environmental disaster would be just as bad. Salt water would poison farmland for generations. Coastal chemical plants and refineries would have been ripped apart, spilling their contents across the landscape. The United States would be fundamentally fractured, facing a humanitarian crisis that's impossible to fully prepare for, all because of one wave. So, after painting that horrifying picture, we have to ask the most important question. Could this really happen? The short answer is it's extremely unlikely. A 1,000-foot mega-tsunami hitting the entire East Coast is at the absolute farthest edge of possibility, and the scientific community is deeply skeptical. The original scenario of a single catastrophic collapse of Cumbre Vieja is now seen as a worst-case hypothesis that probably wouldn't happen. More recent studies suggest that if the volcano's flank did fail, it would likely happen in smaller, separate landslides. These would still be dangerous, but the waves reaching the U.S. would be a few feet high, not 1,000. However, mega-tsunamis are a real thing. In 1958, an earthquake in Lituya Bay, Alaska, caused a massive landslide that sent a wave surging up the side of a mountain to a height of 1,720 feet, the tallest wave ever recorded. But, and this is a huge, but it happened in a narrow, confined fjord. It proved the physics are possible, but on a contained, local scale, not an ocean-wide one. The much more realistic tsunami threat to U.S. doesn't come from the Atlantic at all. It comes from the Cascadia subduction zone, a 700-mile-long fault off the coast of the Pacific Northwest. Scientists are in agreement that this fault is due for a massive, magnitude 9.0 earthquake. That event would trigger a devastating tsunami with waves up to 100 feet high, slamming into the coast of Washington, Oregon, and Northern California within minutes, not hours. This isn't a what if, it's a geological certainty, and it's a threat that emergency planners take very, very seriously. So, while a 1,000-foot wave wiping out the East Coast makes for a great movie plot, it belongs more to the world of fiction than fact. But the science behind that thought experiment is a powerful reminder of the incredible forces our planet can unleash. Mega-tsunamis have happened, and they will happen again, even if their scale is more local. The real takeaway isn't to live in fear of a highly unlikely apocalypse, but to respect the very real tsunami threats that are backed by solid science. Understanding the warning signs, a powerful earthquake, the ocean suddenly pulling back from the shore, and having a plan is our best defense. Sometimes, nature's warnings are the only ones you get, and knowing what to do in those first few moments is what saves lives. What do you think? Did we miss anything about the scenario? And what other huge what-if questions should we tackle next? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey into disaster science, make sure to subscribe and check out our other videos and more fascinating stories about the world we live in.